The INFJ is often called the rarest personality type in the world. They make up only a tiny fraction of the population, but their impact runs far deeper than their numbers suggest. They are quiet, thoughtful, and observant, yet they can also be powerful, intense, and unpredictable. The INFJ moves differently. They think differently. And once you try to control them or define them, you realize something unexpected. You can't. That's what makes them the black swan of human behavior. The term black swan describes something rare and unpredictable, something that defies expectations and changes the way people see the world. That's exactly what happens when an INFJ enters your life. You think you understand people, then they show up, and suddenly, the rules you know don't seem to apply anymore. You can't easily read them because they see things most people don't. You can't manipulate them because they act from their own truth. You can't box them in because they don't live by the same social logic that others do. They are guided by vision, emotion, and an inner moral compass that no one else can adjust. This is what makes them powerful, but also confusing to others. People often try to figure them out, to fit them into familiar patterns, or to influence how they think. But the INFJ resists that, not out of rebellion, but because their path is entirely their own. In this video, we'll look at 6 reasons why the INFJ is the black swan of human behavior. A person you cannot control, predict, or fully understand. Reason number 1. Rare in population, operating on its own frequency. The INFJ is one of the rarest personality types in the world. Their way of thinking, feeling, and acting is shared by very few people, which means they often move through life feeling out of sync with the rest of society. While most people operate based on external systems, what's expected, what's logical, what others think, the INFJ operates from a quiet inner world that runs on a completely different frequency. This rarity is what gives them their strength. They're not trying to fit in because they were never designed to. Their natural perspective allows them to see things from the outside, to notice connections and motives that others miss. They study people quietly, and their understanding of human behavior often surprises those around them. It's not because they're trying to be mysterious. It's because their mind just works differently. They process emotions, words, and energy on multiple levels at once. When most people hear someone talk, they just listen to the words. The INFJ listens to the words, the tone, the emotion underneath, and the silence that follows. They sense things that aren't spoken. This gives them a kind of awareness that can't be taught, and it's one reason you can't control them. You can't convince an INFJ to think or act against their inner truth. They're aware of what's happening around them before most people even notice the shift. Their rarity gives them independence, and that independence makes them unpredictable. They don't follow trends or social rules if those things don't align with their values. This makes them both fascinating and frustrating to others. Some people admire their insight, while others feel uneasy because they can't be easily read or swayed. But that's exactly what makes the INFJ a true black swan. Someone who changes the dynamic just by existing, simply because they can't be controlled or copied. Reason number 2. Driven by introverted intuition that sees patterns early. At the core of the INFJ's personality is something called introverted intuition. It's what gives them the ability to see patterns, predict outcomes, and understand people's behavior long before it becomes obvious. While most people make decisions based on what they see in the moment, the INFJ makes decisions based on what they feel coming. They don't just react to the present, they respond to the future they already sense unfolding. This makes their behavior confusing to others because they often act before the logic is visible. They might leave a situation that looks fine on the outside, but deep down, and then they already know it's going to turn toxic. They may avoid a person who hasn't done anything wrong yet, but their intuition tells them something isn't right. Later, people realize the INFJ was right all along. This foresight is one of the biggest reasons you can't control them. You can't trick or manipulate someone who can see your intention before you act. They pick up on hidden motives and emotional inconsistencies, and once they sense that someone's energy doesn't align, they begin to pull back. They don't usually confront directly, they simply start to create distance. Their intuition is not guesswork. It's a deep pattern recognition built over years of observation and empathy. They connect dots that others overlook. They see where relationships are heading, how conversations will unfold, and what people's real motives are. This gives them quiet power. For people who try to influence or control others, the INFJ is impossible to manage. They can feel manipulation even when it's disguised as kindness or charm. They might smile and stay polite, but inside they've already detached. And once their intuition confirms what they feel, there's no going back. Their ability to act based on unseen patterns makes them unpredictable, not because they're trying to be mysterious, but because they're guided by something most people can't perceive. That's what makes the INFJ a force you can't control. They live by intuition, not by external approval. Reason number 3: strong values and internal compass that override external pressure. One of the main reasons the INFJ can't be controlled is their deep moral foundation. They live by an internal compass that is stronger than any outside influence. While many people are guided by social approval, money, or fear of rejection, the INFJ is guided by conscience and truth. Once they decide what feels right, there is almost nothing that can make them move in another direction. This strength often confuses others. People sometimes mistake the INFJ's calmness for weakness, thinking they can be persuaded or led. But what they don't realize is that underneath that quiet surface lies unshakable conviction. INFJs don't need to argue to prove their point. They simply hold their ground without loud words or resistance. Their power comes from certainty. This inner compass makes them difficult to manipulate. If you try to use guilt, pressure, or emotional control, they will eventually see through it. They may go along temporarily to keep peace, but inside, they are watching, weighing, and deciding. Once they recognize that something goes against their values, they'll walk away without hesitation. This independence is built on authenticity. INFJs have a deep need to live honestly, both with themselves and with others. They despise lies, even small ones, because dishonesty breaks the trust that they base relationships on. That's why when they sense insincerity or selfishness, they start to detach quietly. They would rather lose connection than lose integrity. This same moral depth is what makes them so steady in chaos. While others might bend or follow trends, the INFJ stays consistent. They don't look to others for direction, they look inward. And because they answer to something deeper than public opinion or control, they can't be swayed by manipulation. You can't bribe them with status or fear them into silence. They'll listen, understand, and still do what feels true to them. It's this independence of thought that gives the INFJ their reputation as the Black Swan. They move according to an inner rhythm, not the noise of the world. When the world pulls one way, they often move the other, not to be rebellious, but because their soul tells them to. And once they've made a moral decision, they stand by it, even if they stand alone. Reason number 4: hidden depths and quiet power that others miss until it emerges. INFJs often move quietly, watching and listening. They don't seek attention or validation, so most people underestimate them. They appear calm, maybe even reserved, but beneath that surface is a depth of perception and emotional strength that few people ever see. Their quiet nature is not a lack of power, it's controlled power. This hidden depth is one reason why the INFJ can't be controlled. You can't influence what you don't fully understand. People might think they have an INFJ figured out, only to discover later that the INFJ knew much more than they ever revealed. They don't show their full hand because they believe not everyone deserves access to their inner world. This mystery gives them quiet leverage. They know how to observe without reacting, how to read energy without exposing their own. When conflict arises, they rarely explode. Instead, they choose silence and strategy. And when the time comes to act, they do so with precision and calm confidence. That makes them unpredictable and impossible to dominate. Their power often shows in moments of pressure. When others panic or lose control, the INFJ becomes clear and focused. They have already processed emotions beneath the surface, so their actions appear calm and deliberate. This ability to stay centered is rare, and it gives them natural authority. People notice it even if the INFJ doesn't try to lead. The most surprising part is how this power comes from empathy, not ego. They don't seek control over others, they simply refuse to be controlled themselves. They know who they are, and that quiet self-awareness gives them resilience that can't be shaken. When pushed, they won't fight in obvious ways. They'll simply withdraw their energy and let truth do the work. You can't overpower someone who doesn't play the same game. The INFJ doesn't chase approval, recognition, or control. They live from within, guided by insight and calm conviction. That is what makes their quiet power so striking. It's not about dominance, it's about unbreakable self-awareness hidden beneath stillness. Reason number 5, boundary setting and withdrawal. When misaligned. Another reason the INFJ can't be controlled is their strong sense of boundaries. They may appear flexible and kind, but they know when something crosses the line. They can forgive often, but once they see a pattern of disrespect or manipulation, their walls go up. It's not dramatic, it's decisive. This boundary setting is part of what makes them unpredictable. You may think the INFJ will always be there, always understanding and patient, and then one day they're gone. That disappearance is not sudden for them, it's the final step of a long, private decision-making process. They have noticed the imbalance, tried to fix it quietly, and finally decided that protecting their peace is more important than staying connected. They don't announce this choice or demand closure. They simply remove themselves. To outsiders, it looks cold. To the INFJ, it's survival. They understand that energy is precious and that emotional safety matters more than appearances. So when someone keeps crossing their limits, they don't fight for control. They reclaim it by walking away. Their withdrawal isn't meant to punish others. It's an act of self-respect. They have learned that they can't control other people's behavior, but they can control their response. And their response, more often than not, is distance. Because of this, INFJs can't be manipulated by guilt or emotional games. Once they see through the pattern, they disengage. They don't chase or explain. They believe that silence speaks louder than arguments. This response catches people off guard because they expect the INFJ's empathy to keep them invested forever. But empathy doesn't mean tolerance for chaos. This quiet boundary is what gives the INFJ their power. They protect their time, their peace, and their emotional space with invisible precision. And once they've decided someone no longer deserves access, that decision is final. You can't persuade or control someone who's already at peace with walking away. The INFJ's withdrawal is not weakness, it's mastery. It's their way of saying, you don't control me, I choose what I allow. That simple truth is what makes them untouchable. Reason number 6, vision of contribution beyond self makes their path unique. INFJs move through life with a quiet sense of mission. They often feel guided by something larger than themselves, a vision or calling that shapes every choice they make. This isn't about fame, recognition, or external success. It's about meaning. They need to feel that what they do matters, that it helps people or makes the world a little more honest, a little more humane. This sense of purpose is what makes them impossible to control. You can't manipulate someone whose motivation isn't built on external rewards. The usual tools people use, money, fear, guilt, flattery, don't work on them. Their decisions aren't made to please others. They're made to stay true to their purpose. Even when life gets difficult, INFJs hold on to that purpose as a guiding light. It keeps them steady through chaos and pain. When others would give up or follow the crowd, they stay on their own path. That's why they often seem unpredictable. They aren't reacting to external events. They're listening to something internal, something only they can hear. This inner direction can make others misunderstand them. People might assume they're stubborn, aloof, or disconnected. In reality, they're deeply connected, just not in the usual way. They're connected to a larger idea, a deeper value, a truth they can feel in their bones. That's why INFJs often become teachers, healers, writers, or advocates. They dedicate themselves to causes that align with their inner beliefs, even when those causes are unpopular. When they meet resistance, they don't fight for control. They simply continue walking their path. Their quiet persistence often changes things around them without them trying to. This influence is part of what makes them black swans. Their presence alone shifts perspective. Because they're guided by contribution rather than control, they don't play manipulation games. They lead by example. You can't predict them because they're not chasing what most people chase. Their focus is inward and upward, not outward. They want transformation, not domination. And that's the secret to their freedom. When you act from purpose instead of pressure, you become untouchable. That's what the INFJ embodies, the freedom of living by vision, not control. They remind others that true power doesn't come from forcing the world to change, but from staying unshaken while it tries to. The INFJ truly is the black swan of human behavior, rare, unpredictable, and impossible to control. Their uniqueness doesn't come from rebellion or resistance. It comes from depth. They see life differently because they feel it differently. Their intuition, values, and vision make them move in ways that logic alone can't explain. They can't be manipulated because they live from the inside out. They make decisions based on truth, not pressure. They protect their boundaries, follow their intuition, and stay loyal to their purpose. While others chase attention or approval, the INFJ chases meaning. And that makes them stand apart. To those who know them, INFJs can seem like a mystery, calm on the surface but full of quiet storms underneath. But their mystery isn't meant to confuse. It's meant to show what happens when a person lives in full alignment with their soul. They don't fight for control because they already have it within themselves. If you've ever known an INFJ, you've likely felt this energy. The mix of calm depth and quiet certainty that changes the atmosphere around them. And if you are an INFJ, remember that your difference is your power. You don't have to be understood or managed to make an impact. Your value is in your depth, your peace, ease, and your truth. The world may never fully grasp the INFJ, but it always feels their presence. They are the unexpected ones, the black swans, who remind everyone that true strength is silent and true freedom can never be controlled.